Now, former Conservative advisor Claire Purcell and former Labour advisor James Schneider are with us now for a final look at this morning's newspapers. Where are we starting? Let's look at the Sun front page. This is, well, more misery for Baroness Michelle Mone. It's, in fact, the Mirror newspaper picking up on Michelle Mone and her billionaire husband, Doug.
So she is a very rich woman and a Tory peer. She sits in the House of Lords, and the Guardian and the Mirror especially have been chasing this story for a long time, asking about this 200 million PPE contract that went to this company called PPE MedPro, which the government is now suing for 130 million because the government says they gave them gowns that weren't sterile. And she has said through her lawyers all the way along, I had nothing to do with this company. It's nothing to do with me. It's nothing to do with her husband. And yes, they admitted that she acted as an intermediary, but she says the government was fully aware of her involvement with the company. So that sort of doesn't really make sense either way. But there's a bigger issue here than just one or two people and their engagement, because we all know that we as the public got ripped off in a lot. Of course, not all of these contracts, but in a number of these contracts in the pandemic. And we should really look at why, and not just view it as a few bad apples. Of course, there are bad apples, but view the larger issue. Part of it is that it's too easy to donate to political parties, and there's a big often people that donated to the Conservative Party ended up getting contracts, but also we'd hollowed out a lot of our state capacity. I mean, the fact that companies that had no history of manufacturing these things were given these very large contracts to manufacture them shows that there had been a breakdown in our state's ability to procure and manufacture things and work with reliable manufacturers who, and there were loads of, we all remember the whiskey manufacturers that suddenly stopped making whiskey and started making hand sanitizer. I mean, there were lots of companies that did really good things very, very, very fast, but there were some real shysters out there.
Clearly. Claire, we're moving on to a different story now in the Daily Mail. Sexual assault claims, those shocking allegations coming out yesterday.
That's right. The Conservative Party really does have a problem. And anybody that's listened recently to Syed Abbasi, who is an ex-chairman of the Conservative Party and is a peer in the House of Lords, she has been quite brutal by saying that it's rot at the heart of the Conservative Party. They haven't been able to deal with all of this. And I think the one thing that, when you started looking at the story, the one thing that really concerned me is the allegations that originally came out in Nadine Dorries' book. Mm-hmm. So that was all put out there, serialised in a newspaper. We all picked over the pieces. But what about the victim in all of this? There is somebody here who has been a victim of crime, allegedly, but they have had very little backup. They have had very little help from the Conservative Party, and now they're being thrust into... Their story is being thrust into the headlines once again to sell somebody's book. And I find this the most sort of heinous crime of it. The victim isn't being taken seriously, they aren't being looked after, and that has to stop. And I think the Conservative Party has a real duty of care to women and young men in Parliament to make sure that they're looked after.
And of course, the allegation also being that they looked after the victim by paying for counselling without actually addressing the reason why that person needed counselling in the first place.
And still, at the time, not admitting that there was a problem.
Yeah.
So paying for somebody to go and receive some therapy is not saying we're going to sort this problem out, we want to look after you. It's just making it go away. And you can't do that. And this is not just the Conservative Party. There are scandals across all political parties. They are ill-prepared to deal with what goes on in Westminster. Westminster itself has to change, political parties have to change, the way we choose our candidates also needs to change. There is so much, and I'm glad it's coming to the fore now. I don't think that these people have deserved any of this treatment, but if it is going to change for the better, then great.
OK. Story in the Times, James. We discussed this yesterday. It's taking on a new turn. John Bird, the founder of the big issue. I think he's Lord Bird now, if I'm writing so, says the Home Secretary should have known better than to declare street homelessness a lifestyle choice. Not strictly what she said, but that's the ballpark, right?
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was just quite a powerful piece from someone who knows about homelessness, and he says that it's plain ignorant to say it's a lifestyle choice, and that being homeless isn't something that you'd wish on your worst enemy, and that really people we should be listening to are Centrepoint, The Big Issue, St Mungo's, Crisis, Shelter. I mean, they're the experts in it.
But wasn't she just doing, in a way, what John Bird had previously done? Because he talked about, I think, killing with kindness and not giving money to people on the streets who were asking for money. A few years ago, that was his position. And lots of people decried him for that. Is she not kind of saying a similar thing, that you're feeding the problem rather than solving it?
I don't think so, because what she was doing was blaming homeless people for the situation that they're in and saying that basically they are seeking that. That's what they're going for. It's just not a sensible way of dealing with what's clearly it's a failing of our government, it's a failing of our society, that you have to step over people who are sleeping rough, and clearly saying, well, a charity shouldn't give them a tent isn't going to fix it. People need homes. They don't need, aggressive tweets.
We're going to move on to a story we've been talking about all morning. Page 3 in The Mirror, Claire. Nearly 40% of us have got nicknames.
Oh, I just love a nickname.
Yeah.
It is one of those things that people become their nickname, I think. It's one of those things, they sort of evolve, don't they?
Take it on.
They do. I mean, my cats have nicknames that have come out of absolutely nowhere. So the original name of the cat is completely different to the name it is now. I mean,
do you have a nickname?
I do have a nickname.
Go on, Claire.
I do have a nickname. I am called Spadsky.
Spadsky! I love that! That is amazing.
My boss started this one because I was a special advisor.
Yeah.
So
Which boss?
Caroline Noakes. Love it, Caroline.
James, nickname?
I don't have a nickname, and even if I did have one, I wouldn't say, because it wouldn't be as good as that.
No, Spadsky really
Where
wins.
do they? I mean, that makes sense. You're known as Shovelface.
Or just simply incompetent.
Did you not know that?
No, I didn't
Sorry,
know.
I do
Is that what they call me
apologise.
upstairs?
Yeah,
on
it's all said with, sort of love.
He's Foxy Collins, so he gets Mum's next
Sure about
favourite.
that.
That's what I call our Ian.
But there are some, I mean, Mardy Bum. Nobody calls anybody Mardy Bum. That's just a kind of, it's not a nickname, is it?
But Captain Obvious, which I love. I mean, I think I've given people that kind of nickname.
Captain Obvious
from
is
time
good.
to time.
Big Man, Ginge, Spud, Shorty.
Turtle.
We're going to be doing tortoises later on
Can
as
hardly
we
wait.
speak to Nick Ellaby doing one of his special bits.
Okay.
Otherwise, no. But sadly, we have to move on. We'll be watching that later on in the show. Thanks for joining us this morning, Claire and James.